Hello and welcome back. This is Dawn with another video for Honeybee Stamps. Today we are going to be making 3 super cute, very simple and sweet cards, all featuring my newest collection with Honeybee Stamps. This is Storybook Spring. Now this collection has 3 coordinating products in it, a stamp set, a stencil, and a die, and I'm absolutely over the moon with how these turned out. Now, I've illustrated these in that very soft, delicate storybook style. You've got a bunny, you've got a bunch of floral elements here, including a wreath and some bees and some butterflies, as well as a ton of sentiments. You've got the coordinating die here to help you cut out all of those. And then we've also included a stencil here to color in all of those little images perfectly and accurately. It is a 4-piece stencil set, and you'll have everything you need in here to color all of the images included in the set. And there are a lot of options with this collection, so I thought today we would take a look at a couple of those. Now for my first card, I'm going to create one that features the wreath with a sentiment in the center. So here we have this stamp. You'll notice that this wreath is not enclosed at the top. It's actually open at the top, which does allow the stamp set to move. It allows the stamp itself not to keep a perfect circle. This is fine if you're just using the stamp itself, but if you want to use the die or the stencil, you want to make sure that it is stamped perfectly so that it will line up with the die or the stencil. So what I've done is I took the die and I die cut it from the center of a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch card panel. Now this is going to allow me to use this as a template to place my stamp, and then my stamp will always match up with the die or the stencil. So I like to use a contrasting color so that I know that I'll always be able to clearly see that white outline here. In this case, I'm using white paper. So I'm going to go ahead and put that down in my MISC, and then I'm going to lay my template right over top. And then I'm going to use that as my guide to place my stamp. Because I've cut it from the 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch cardstock here, I know that it's going to be centered and exactly where I want it. So I'm just going to lay it down and then just kind of move it around till it's completely centered inside my template there. And the nice thing is, as long as you've got it within those boundaries, you'll be fine. If it's a little bit off, it's okay. It's not going to make a big deal. It'll still fit on the die cut. I'm going to close my MISC door to pick that up, and then we can remove our template and start stamping. And then I'll just store this template with my dies so that I always have it on hand and ready to go. Now I'm stamping today in brown. I just like that the softer brown is going to complement the storybook look better than a stark, crisp black would. It's going to give it a little bit lower contrast, which is what I'm going for. And you'll see here when I hold this up, that's a very fine line, soft illustration, very simple in nature, but definitely evokes that storybook feel. And you could use any medium that you prefer to color these images, but today I'm going to be using ink blending along with the coordinating stencils. Now there are 4 stencils in this stencil pack, and they're very easy to use. Each item only has 1 layer, and it doesn't matter what order you do them in. So I'm going to line up the first layer here. I like to start with the flowers or the bigger areas. And then I'm going to use the new Belux blending brushes to color this in. They are the perfect size, and I can get a lot of control. Some of these areas are quite small, so these size 7 blending brushes happen to be the perfect size to use and still give me lots of control, and I don't have to worry about masking anything off on the stencil. They also have the size 10 and the size 5. So the size 7 fits right in between these two, and you guys, I am so excited to have these in my stash. Y'all know that I love ink blending, and this is going to allow me to get even more detailed with my ink blending on die cuts. Oof, we're in trouble, you guys, we're in trouble. Okay, so back to this card. I'm using Distress inks today to do all of my blending, and I prefer the inks over the oxides because I don't want to have to overstamp this again. The Distress inks are not going to obscure my stamp lines, whereas Distress oxides have a pigment and dye ink blend, so they can obscure your stamp line, which means you might want to come in and do a overstamping. If that's the case, you can certainly do that. You'll just want to make sure that you keep everything set up in your MISC so that once you're done doing your ink blending, you can put it back in the MISC and restamp in the exact same spot. I've already removed everything from my MISC. I didn't think that far ahead, so we're using the Distress ink. Now with these little Belux brushes, you can see here that I can get very targeted ink application. You can use them exactly like you would use a regular blending brush in a circular motion to kind of brush the ink on, or you can use the little flicking motion, which is what I like to do to make it the color a little bit heavier around the edges, and then come in softly and leave the center open. We do have another stencil that's going to allow us to add our flower centers. So I want to keep that area bright and clean of color so that whatever I put there in the middle will be the true color. If you want to color the flower entirely, you can absolutely do that. You just make sure that you put a darker color over your center. So you can see here I just ink up that brush and then do a flicking motion from the outside in. I'm applying more pressure on the outside, and then as I flick, I will lighten up the pressure, and this will give me a darker color application where I start and a lighter application where I finish. All right, so I'll just repeat these same steps for each of the flowers, and then it's time to move on to the second stencil. Now I will choose the next biggest flower, which here are the trumpet-shaped flowers there, right above our yellow flowers. And then I've sped this up quite a bit because it's ink blending, and it's very simple ink blending, but I wanted you guys to be able to see each layer. I'm choosing a very muted color palette today. Again, this is just playing on that whole storybook feel. You could certainly do these in very bright colors if you wanted. I just, again, love a soft muted palette, and that's the vibe I was going for. So I've grabbed the Weathered Wood, which is a very smoky blue, very gray blue, but it's absolutely beautiful in this color palette, and it looks fantastic with that scattered straw. So again, I'm just using a number 7 Belux brush here to quickly add some color to these flowers. Now also on this layer are the leaves here for the large flowers. So I'm going to add a little bit of Mowed Lawn to these to give them just a quick swipe of color. And then we can move on to the third stencil. And this stencil has all of those smaller leaves that actually form the wreath. And for that, I'll be using peeled paint. I have really enjoyed using stencils as of late. So I was really excited that Honeybee allowed me to create a stencil for this set. I think that it turns out absolutely beautiful every single time, and it's really a no-brainer. You just put some color through there and you've got a beautiful professional looking finished design in no time. So I really hope that in the future I'm able to create some more stencils for our stamp sets, because let's face it, we don't always have the time or the inclination to color ourselves, and stencils are just such a great tool to have to really stretch your creativity. So here you can see most everything is filled in now, but we've got one more layer. And on that layer, we're going to have the smallest little flowers and then the large flower centers. And for those, I'm using dried marigold. And then for the little itty bitty flowers, we're going to use Born Lipstick. And I stuck with this same color combo for all of our cards today. So they'll all be a variation of these colors. All right, so once we're done, I'll remove that stencil. And here you can see just how beautiful this turned out. And it was so easy and simple to color, and it's going to come out perfect every single time. All right, so the wreath was designed so that you could either put the bunny inside of it, or you can put many of the sentiments inside there, and they'll all fit perfectly right inside of that wreath. So for this card, we're going to do the Wishing You a Spring Full of Blessings. First, I want to die cut this. So I'm going to grab the coordinating die, and we're just going to line that up and then run that through my die cut machine. And now we have our perfect little wreath die cut. Now in the background, I'm going to use the Eyelet Lace 3D embossing folder. This is from Honeybee's last release. I didn't get a chance to use it yet, but I thought that this little Swiss dot pattern would be perfect for this storybook feel. So I've gone ahead and ran that through my embossing machine here, and you can see all of the depth and detail. Look at how deeply this embosses. Absolutely gorgeous. And this is going to make the perfect backdrop for my, my little wreath. Now, because we have that textured background, I need something to stamp my sentiment on. So I went ahead and die cut a circle here from a nesting circle die, and then I'm just going to glue my wreath to that die. This is going to give me a solid surface to stamp on. Now I could obviously have used the coordinating die, but I didn't like having the two things popped up over top of that textured background. For this one, it just made more sense to me to have a solid surface to stamp directly onto. So that was an easy fix, a simple circle die cut, glue that wreath to it, and now I can just stamp my sentiment here right in the middle, again using that same brown that I used to stamp the wreath. Simple and sweet. All right, all that's left is to adhere this card and put everything together. So for the top panel here, I'm going to grab the Honeybee Stamps Thin 3D foam strips, We're going to adhere that to a light green card base. This is their lower profile foam tape, and I love it because I can put just a little bit of dimension between each layer without getting too bulky. So I'll use that same foam tape for my focal wreath here, and I'll adhere that right in the center. Now I do add a few finishing details, but we'll review that at the end. For now, let's go ahead and jump into this next card. All right, for this card, we're going to feature the little bunny, which is sized perfectly to fit inside the wreath, but we can also use it on its own. It's generously sized so it can carry the card as a focal point by itself. I'm going to go ahead and place all of my images here on my platform, and then we're going to stamp them all at once. So I've grabbed the bunny, I've grabbed one of the little floral swags, which will double as a little floral crown for our bunny, which is absolutely adorable. I'm going to grab a couple of the bees included in the set and the butterflies. And again, I'm going to stamp those in that same brown. And these guys are just so stinking cute. Look at this. Ah. And they're going to be so easy to color because all of these images are also included in our stencil. So let's go ahead and color these in. Now the bunny is down in the corner of one of the stencils, and it's just one open layer, so he's really easy to color in. Now it may look like this is taking me forever, and that's because it is. Two reasons. One, I chose antique linen at first, and I just realized that this was going to take forever to build up this color with that light of a brown. So I switched over to a little bit darker brown, and then two, this is a brand new blending brush, so it has zero color in it. If you've ever worked with blending brushes before, you know that the longer you use them, the more seasoned they get, the more ink they get in them, the quicker they lay down color. So because I was using a very light brown, even here I'm using a pretty light brown. This is our previous warm wool. This is no longer available, but it is my favorite brown. I'm fingers crossed I can get somebody to pick up this color because it is a wonderful, wonderful, beautiful neutral brown. It's just absolutely gorgeous. But I digress. So once you get that color built up in your blending brushes, they deposit color much more quickly. So you just got to kind of suffer through getting the color built up in those brushes. But once it is, man, these are a powerhouse. Absolutely love these little bitty blenders too, because I am able to get in here and really concentrate where I want my shadows and leave a lot of open areas. Like here in the ears, I wanted to just add a little bit of brown around the outside, but I wanted to leave the centers open to add in a little bit of a pink. So I picked up the worn lipstick, and you can see here I'm able to just use what was left on this brush from my previous inkings and add a little bit to his ears and just a little bit to his or her cheeks, because it's going to be a her because we're going to add that flower crown. Although a little boy, he could wear a flower crown. Anybody can wear a flower crown. Flower crowns are for everyone. I'm sticking to it. So again, just adding in that little bit of pink there. And now we have a beautifully, perfectly blended bunny, and I love it. I just love it so much. You'll notice that I left some texture in there. I purposely stippled in some color so that there would be a little bit of texture. If you've ever looked at some of those old storybook illustrations, the color is very uneven, and it has almost a, I don't want to say mottled because that's not what I'm thinking of, almost a distressed look, where the color is kind of clean in some areas, but dirty in some areas and mottled. And that's what I was really going for here. So I'm doing an uneven application of color, and then I'm adding a little bit of stippling in there by just tapping the brush with a lot of ink on it, just tapping it over areas so that it deposits these little tiny, tiny dots of color. And this adds just a lot of interest to the image. So now we've moved on, we've done some of the flower crown, and now I'm finding the other areas on the same stencil to color in the bee's wings here. So I'm lining that up and adding a little bit of that weathered wood over the bee's wings. And then I'm going to find my butterflies. So you can see here on this same layer, we've got the butterfly wings. So for that, I'm going to use a little bit of that dried marigold. And we're going to fill in those butterflies. Again, we're keeping all of our colors very harmonious throughout all of our cards because they'll end up being like a card set. All right, now the only thing I have to do is finish up that little flower crown. So I'll go through the rest of the stencils and I will find the flower, the large flower center there, and the leaves as well. So again, very easy to line these up because each element is on the same spot of each stencil. So once you find where that element is on the stencil, all you have to do is look in the exact same spot on each subsequent stencil. All right, color change coming up here in 3, 2, 1. Sorry about the lighting switch there, you guys. The previous footage was shot at night and this was finished the next morning, so it's quite a lot brighter. But I went ahead and used all of the coordinating dies to die cut my pieces, and you can see how that flower crown fits on that bunny. Now, if you're ever wondering, like, how am I going to figure out what goes to what here? This is a little trick. Everything is lined up exactly like it is on the stamp set on the die set. So if you take the stamp and you flip it over, you can see all of the die cuts line up perfectly with all of the images. So that is just a big selling point here, because I know it can be hard to figure out which die goes where, especially on these large die sets. But again, just flip that stamp over and you'll know exactly what goes to what. So I've got another panel here that I used that Eyelet Lace 3D embossing folder on, and I'm going to create another label to layer on top of that. I'm going to use the new Lovely Layouts Party. This has a lot of great just layering backgrounds and panels. I'm going to pick the third largest one here. It's got this little circle center that it engraves or debosses into our panel, and I think our bunny is going to fit perfectly in there. So I'm going to go ahead and cut one of those from the light green cardstock, and you can see here all of that beautiful debossed detail in here. And I think it, again, really fits perfectly with that storybook feel, even though this is for a, more of a birthday party set. I feel like the details here also go very well with this storybook look and feel. So she fits perfectly right here in the center, and it leaves us room for a sentiment underneath. However, she's looking a little lonely, and I just felt like she needed something else. So I went back to the stamp set and I stamped, stenciled, and die cut a bunch of the extra little florals included in this set, and we're going to create a little bit more robust scene right there in the center of our card. All right, so I've taken that green panel and adhered that with a little bit of that 3D foam tape to the center of my panel, and then I die cut another circle die and added just a little bit of ink blending there in the center in that weathered wood, and I adhered that with the 3D foam tape as well. We're going to adhere the bunny right in the center using a little liquid adhesive, and then we're going to adhere that crown directly on top of the bunny, again using some liquid adhesive. We've got all of these extra pieces over here that we've stamped, colored, and die cut, and now we can start creating a little arrangement around our bunny just to fill it out just a little bit more. I do want this to stay sweet and simple, but not that simple. I want a little bit more. So here's where I just have fun. I'm going to go ahead and throw this into a little bit of fast motion here, because I know you guys enjoy seeing the process and seeing some of the different options. And it does usually take me quite a bit of time to figure out how I want to arrange everything. I do spend probably too much time, but that's part of the fun for me. That's part of the enjoyment of crafting for me, is taking my time and trying different things and getting things exactly the way I want. I'm in no hurry when I craft and create. This is my therapy. And you don't want to rush through therapy. You're not going to get what you need. You got to take your time. You got to do the work in therapy. And this is my therapy. So I do the work. All right. So I've figured out basically what I want to do on one side, and I'm going to loosely mirror that on the other side. So you saw me glue all of those little pieces together so that it's just one little floral arrangement there that I can adhere on the right side. And then I'm going to do kind of the same thing on the left side. Here I'm checking my sentiment. I know that I need it to be flush in some areas, and that means I need to use a little bit of 3D foam to pop it up over our circle there, because that circle is on 3D foam. He's also going to hide the bottom of the bunny there. The sentiment now has a sex, just in case you didn't know that. The sentiment is now a he, and it's going to hide the bottom of the bunny. So here you can see all of this has been adhered together so it acts as one piece. I'll adhere that on the right side. And then again, I'll loosely mirror that on the left side. I'm not going for exact symmetry here. I'm going for, they'll be sisters, not twins. But if you prefer, you could absolutely do the perfect mirror image. I just think that it ends up being just a little more interesting when they are similar but not identical. So as always, I'm going to spend copious amounts of time figuring out exactly where I want everything to go. I'm going to add in these little bees that are also included in the set. They are just too much fun. And I could have kept going and adding more, but I remembered we're keeping it simple. Keeping it simple this time, simple and sweet. right, so that pretty much is going to finish up this card. Now off camera, I did create a third card, so let's go ahead and review all 3 cards. All right, so first up we have the Spring Wreath card here. Now this is the wreath with one of the larger sentiments here in the center. And then to finish this one off, I did add a little butterfly. I kept this very, very simple. We have that eyelet lace 3D embossing folder in the background. And then I added a little bit of Spectrum Noir sparkle pen. I can't remember exactly which one it is, but I'll link it in the description box below. You can see here when I tilt it in the light, there's just that little bit of subtle shimmer, which I think complements the whole design perfectly. Next up, we have our little bunny as the focal point. I did add a little bit of glossy accent to the eyes just to give them a little bit of dimension. And then again, some more of that sparkle pen to the florals, the bee's wings, and the butterfly. Now I felt like this needed a little something at the top there, so I did add a twine bow and a little button there. And again, I adore how sweet this is. Can I say sweet and simple anymore in this video? I'm going to try not to say it again. Can't make promises though. All right, so off camera, I did create a third card. Now this one is a 1-layer card. So I stamped everything on one panel, used the stencils to color it in, and then added our sentiment at the bottom. Again, a little bit of that sparkle pen, some glossy accents on the eyes, and this one is done. Very postal friendly. You can make a whole bunch of these, create a card set. You could add any sentiment you wanted. Happy birthday, happy spring, thinking of you. You don't have to use a spring related sentiment to use these images. I just think these would make great baby cards as well. Baby shower, tags, gifts, so many possibilities. All right, guys, I really hope that you enjoyed this look at the Storybook Spring Collection, and I hope that you enjoyed the video. If you did, don't forget to give this a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, make sure that you are subscribed so you don't miss any of my future videos. I will have all of the featured products listed in the description box below. As always, I want to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye.